Good day, everyone, and welcome to the PTSD Buddies podcast. I'm your host, Jamie McWhorter. PTSD Buddies is a nonprofit organization that helps people dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD Buddies provides online support through Facebook groups, and we currently have thousands of members all over the world. This podcast is dedicated to those members of PTSD Buddies, and these are their stories. On this episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast, I talked to Kent from P.E.I, Canada. Now, Kent is a first responder, a paramedic. Now, Kent takes us through first his childhood and talks about what it was like growing up on P.E.I. He takes us through his reasoning and why he became a paramedic. He talks about his training. He talks about some of his family life. He talks about some of the ugly scenes that he was a paramedic on. And he talks about how he started feeling PTSD entering his life. So for anyone out there who might find stories from a paramedic triggering, just a trigger warning. He does go into some stories of car scenes and everything, so some trigger warnings out there for anyone who could become triggered from these stories. Just a heads up, all right? So without further ado, here's Kent from P.E.I. Good day, everybody. How's it going there, PTSD Buddies? It's Jamie, and I'm here with another episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast. And I got a friend from a very special place, P.E.I. I love this province so much. If you haven't been to P.E.I, you really need to visit it. It is one of the most beautiful provinces that Canada has to offer. And I'm here with a great friend of mine, Kent. Kent, how's it going in P.E.I today?
Good. It's a bit cloudy, Jamie, but hopefully we'll get some sun sometime.
Yeah. Now, Kent, I know a lot about you. We've been friends for a while, Kent, and I know you've been with the fire department and stuff. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a 23-year veteran paramedic that was forced to retire because of PTSD, and I'm still active with the fire department. I have over 20 years in.
20. That's a long time for both departments. Two major departments, too.
I'm in a small little department called Victoria by the Sea Fire Department, and we don't do many calls, so we're just a little village that is what we cover. So
Right
it's nice and quiet here now. I was in a bigger department, and I'm kind of glad I moved away.
Well, I'm sure the people in your community appreciate you for your service, Kent. Kent, PTSD, I know you deal with it. We've talked before. You've dealt with it for quite some time now. Before we get into that, how about we talk about Kent before PTSD? Maybe talk about your childhood or anything like that. You okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, let's talk about Kent before PTSD and the young Kent.
Well, I grew up in a family of, there was 9 of us. My mother had 3 children, which I'm the oldest, and my stepfather had 6, and we're called the Brady Bunch, you might as well say. So I'm the 3rd youngest of the total 9. My father was a fisherman.
9 people. Wow.
And my mother was she did quite a few different things, but at the end of it, she ended up going back and taking her LPN. Well, in her day, it was LNA.
Yep.
Nursing assistant.
Nursing assistant, yeah.
So during the summertime, we pretty well had freedom. Dad was fishing, Mom was working, and where we lived out in the country.
Yeah.
Little place called Cape Wolf. Nice little fishing community. Everybody knew everybody. Half of us were related to each other, so a lot of my dad's brothers and sisters lived there. So my mom had 2 brothers and a sister, and one was in the military, and one was a plumber, and then One was a housewife.
Yeah.
And I grew up playing ball. We played ball hockey every year too, played ice hockey. Uh, Mom and Dad never worried about us. The only time they really worried about us is if we didn't show up for supper,
Yeah.
because that was the only thing we had to do: check in, have supper, or call saying we're having supper somewhere else, one or the other, just so they knew where we were.
Sounds great.
Went to school in O'Leary, and then up and took junior high in Woodstock, P.E.I, and then high school in Elmsdale.
Nice.
Didn't go right, didn't go right into university or college or anything like that. I fished with my uncle for 5 years before I decided I'd get into paramedicine.
Yeah.
Um, I fished lobsters, scallops, sea mackerel, and that's about it. Through unemployment, played hockey in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Good Canadian boy.
Good Canadian boy. Drank a little, but not much. Um, about 89, 90 is when well, I guess it was 88, 89. I was decided, I said, that's when the government talked about changing regulations on unemployment where you got paid what you worked
Okay.
instead of getting 4 or 5 months of unemployment. If you work 3 months, that's all you got for
Okay.
3 months.
Yeah.
So I decided I would go back to school. My dad sort of pushed it on me. He said, you should go back to school where you can get a full time job and that. I always watched the reruns of Emergency. I don't know if you remember the show Emergency or not.
Yes, I do.
Johnny and Roy.
It's amazing how many first responders are inspired by that show.
Yeah. Well, what inspired me was one of the persons that had something to do with the show, Doctor. I forget his name. He's over in Halifax. He did a lot of this is what a paramedic should do,
Right.
and was on the show on the show telling them what to do or
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Yeah. Like an
So,
advisor on the show.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I talked it over. This was back when ambulance services run at a funeral homes here, and I talked to one of the funeral home owners, and he helped me. And I talked about it too with my family doctor. He gave me a good write up, and so I applied and I got accepted. And then I applied for a grant from it was called West Prince Ventures, and the way it worked was they paid for everything.
Nice.
I got to draw my unemployment in order to pay for my rent and have to spend the money. But uniforms, books, clothing for the course, they bought the uniform. And they paid for the course too. So all I had to do was guarantee 3 years to work in Prince County. So
Exciting times, eh?
yeah, so I took the course in 1990, the fall of 1990, and it was the first 6 month course that they were given. So it's 3 months in the classroom, 3 months in the on the job training where I took it all of Moncton.
Okay.
So my one of my uncles lived in Moncton, so free room board. So more money to spend to go partying. Made a good friend through that course from Newfoundland, to be exact. David Bess. I don't know exactly where he is now, but
Shout out to David.
shout out to David. He's pretty. I think he's in Nova Scotia somewhere. Um, then I 2000 no 1992. The fall of '91, I went to UPEI for a year and worked as a trainer for the hockey team because I was a paramedic. And while that was going on, I'll have to go back. While I was waiting to take the course the summer before that fall, my nephew died.
Oh,
He had a strange defect to his heart,
yeah.
and he was diving for quarters in a pool,
Wow.
and the artery or whatever just busted. And it was funny. He was telling the doctor he was having pains in his chest, because like he was under 16.
Yeah.
The doctor said, "Oh, those are just growing pains. Don't worry about it." Well, he died, and I went to the wake and that, and it's like, is this why I'm getting into this? And I'm starting to think a little. And I said, yeah, I'm getting into it to help people.
Yeah.
So when I was at university, we were over across for the weekend to play for hockey, and that's when my grandfather died.
Wow.
And I knew nothing about it until we pulled onto the ferry, and the coach of the team come up to me and said, when we get off, when we get to the island, you come with me and get in the car. I got to tell you something. So I knew nothing. And when we got in the car, he told me that my grandfather passed away. The funeral was Sunday or Monday, I forget what day. Because we're coming back on Sunday. And he said, "I'm going to take you into your stepbrothers in Summerside, and your older stepbrother's going to pick you up there and take you to your parents." I said, "Okay."
Okay.
I had no soup with me or nothing. Thankfully, it was at my mother's. So to the wake, I started having some. After the funeral, I started feeling funny. So I talked to one of my professors, who was a priest, and he told me that he said, "What the problem is you never got to say goodbye. You had dropped off. The wake was over. You just went to the funeral, and then you come back to school." He said, "You never got the grieve." Okay, that sounds good. So, moving on. So I graduated 2006, in the spring of 2006. I had a cousin that hung herself, and it hit the family hard because this girl, she has everything in her life.
Yeah.
She was smart, she was pretty, she was going to school to be a lawyer.
Nobody's seen it coming, hey?
Nobody seen it coming. She was her mother was going to pick her up for a job interview.
Yeah.
The next morning, and her mom called her that night because she never called. And she kept calling her. She had a key to her apartment, so she went over. So she found her.
Oh man. I can't imagine.
It hit all of us hard.
Yeah.
But continuing on, kept going. I was divorced. So first marriage went bad, so divorced. 2005, started dating this girl with two little kids, two little girls.
Yep.
And I was heading to Moncton in Mammoth one day, and it was beautiful day in P.E.I. Got off the bridge, about 2 miles, it started to downpour. So we kept on going, trucking along. Things were going good. Stopped raining, so I shut off the windshield wipers and driving along. And I had the cruise on when I was on PEI, but all I did was step on the brake and just disengaged it. It was still on.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't know if I fell asleep or I was daydreaming or whatever, but we went off the divided highway.
Whoa.
We didn't roll or anything. Like, I caught it, but I did hit one of those snowplow markers.
Okay, yeah.
Right in the center of the bumper. And that woke everybody up in the truck. The passenger that was sitting beside me snoring. So I got back on the road and all the way back over to the right-hand side, and I pulled over and I hopped out and I run around, checked it out. I seen the dent, but airbags didn't go off. There was some of those long weeds on the mirror, so I took them off and I walked around and looked around, and I said, well, we got to get this patient to the hospital in Moncton. He's going for a test. We can't slow down or nothing. So I called the office. This is when the new company took over, the big company, and no more mom and pop organization. And kept on going to Moncton, got to Moncton City, dropped the patient off, came back down, called the company, said, here's what happened.
Yep.
But the airbags didn't go off. But they say the airbags have been activated. So I said, what do you want us to do? So they said, just wait a minute. They made some phone calls. They called us back and said, hey, we want you to take the ambulance over to the depot. They're going to fix it up. We're going to send another ambulance to pick up your patient. And that's that. And so we went over and they said, here's the vehicle. Go get something to eat and then come back. We'll see what we can find. So this is where my PTSD started.
From the accident.
When we were given a vehicle, my partner asked me if I want to drive. Like, no, I don't want to drive. I said, I just want to relax and focus on this and try to hear the world happen.
Right.
So we went and ate, didn't eat too much, wasn't that hungry. Came back, they said, yeah, it's all ready to go. I said, well, how come the airbags didn't go off? They should have went off, shouldn't they? And they said, they should have, but the sensor didn't pick it up.
Yep.
Don't worry, we disconnected it. It's not going to activate now. Okay, that's all I want to know.
Yeah.
So my partner, I said, look at my partner. I said, you're driving home. I said, I'm just going to sit here and relax here for a while.
Yeah, you're shaking. Yeah, got it.
And the supervisor called us and asked us how we're doing. And you know what us people are like in first responders. As first responders, we say everything's okay.
Yep.
And that's what he said.
Pushing through.
That's what I told him. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. And I said to my partner, are you okay? And she said, yeah, I'm okay. And I said, there, we're both okay.
Well, it's still pretty fresh. You're not going to be feeling symptoms right away anyway.
Oh. And he called us again just to make sure everything was all right. And then he called the third time. And we're almost on the bridge. And I said, you know, maybe I'm not okay, but I'm not going to say anything to him.
Yeah.
I said, no, everything's okay. He said, good. Just want to let you know we're sending you on an MVA.
What's that?
Motor vehicle accident.
Oh, perfect. Just what you needed, eh?
With a DOA.
Did you feel ready?
Got on scene, went down, checked her out. She was a DOA. Turned around and looked and seen fireman caught him, stopped him. Another fireman told me, "That's your husband." And I'm looking at him. I know. So everything started flooding. Emotions started coming. Tears started coming. So I said to my partner, I said, "Listen, I'll get the information from the police. I'm going to grab the book, the paperwork, and go to the behind the hop in the rescue van and sit in there. Do the fact I could have a cigarette in the back of that truck.
Yeah.
And then get some water or something to drink because I started drying up." The RCMP officer came over and he gave me all the information, and I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." So we're sitting there and we're waiting for the coroner, and we're almost off shift. So I had all the paperwork done. I just had to get a sign off on it, and if I needed the officer's signature, I got it, and then my partner had to sign for it. We were waiting for another ambulance to come in and relieve us. And so we left. We got back. I started filling out the accident report. I said, "I'll finish this tomorrow when I come into work." And I went home. Dogs were waiting for me. Thank God. We just curled up in bed and went to sleep.
Yeah.
I got up the next day and I said, "I don't want to go to work, but I have to." Showered. Didn't want to put on the uniform, but I did. Hopped in the truck, and for some unknown reason, I left like a half hour earlier than I normally do, because normally I'll sit at home and tinker around or something. And then, so I started driving, and I never noticed. So I almost got to Summerside, and hey, I only had 5 minutes to get to Summerside. I was only driving like maybe 40 kilometers an hour on a 90.
Yeah.
Wow. I did, and I got to work, and I did my checklist in the truck, and then I started working on the accident report again and finished it up and handed it in. And my partner asked me how I was doing. I said, "Not that good." I said, "I don't want to drive." He said, "Okay, I can understand that. But can you drive if you need to?" I said, "I don't know."
Yeah.
So we did transfer and came back. He said, "How are you doing now?" I said, "Not good." I said, he goes, "I figured that because you weren't very talkative." And I had a nightmare that night, and what it was I dreamt that it was me, and I was driving along, and then the next thing I know, I went to a funeral home. There's 3 caskets, and one was mine, and one was the 2 girls. And 2 were the 2 little girls that my girlfriend had. So I think I was getting the 2 calls mixed up, the accident and the DOA. And so, and he said, "Well, you're going to have to drive if I need you to drive. Not if we go in an emergency," because he was a level higher than I was.
Yeah.
He was an PCP and I was PCP, and he could get drugs, I couldn't. So that's understandable. But I said, don't think I can drive. So he went into the office. Our manager of the Summerside. He said, well, he'll drive if he has to. And he goes up, he said, I don't think he can. And I broke down, and he said, I think he needs to see a doctor. And I sort of broke down a little. And if you're not going to take him up, I will.
Yeah.
He can wait till the end of the day. No, he needs to go now. So we went up to outpatient. I talked to the emergency doctor who I knew. I told him what happened and everything. I told him about the nightmare and that. And, well, here's some medication here to help you sleep and that. Because I'm going to get you in to see the psychologist.
Okay.
The psychologist. And he said, yeah. He'll talk to you, and if you need more medication, he'll prescribe it for you. And he goes, I'm going to put you on the fast track. So that was the first time I met Chris Stewart. We did, it was talk therapy, sort of. I forget the original name it's called. But you talk about the call until you start crying. And he keeps pushing you until you cried so hard that you couldn't talk. But he kept doing it every time you went to see him. And as soon as I could talk from the start to the beginning without crying, I was fixed. So that took about 3 months. The driving part, I still have that now. I drive under the speed limit all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm still working. 2007, my great grandmother dies of 103. So that's all right. 2009, my grandmother died. 2012, I got remarried to a beautiful girl. I now live on the sunny side or the cloudy side right today of Argyle, of P.E.I. called Argyle Shore. 2013, my dad died, stepdad dies. But we knew something was going to happen. He already had quadruple bypass, open heart surgery. He had a stroke, and so he was told he had Alzheimer's and dementia. Mom ended up staying home staying home from work and looking after him. He died when he was 81, 82 in there.
Yeah.
But he was a young 80-year-old. His mind was with it when he was 80. Once he turned 81, everything seemed to slide. The day before he died, he went and seen the doctor, was told that he had cancer, and he said he wasn't going to do any treatment or nothing like that. And Mom asked him where he wanted to go afterwards, and he said, I want to go to the dairy bar and get some ice cream. So he got some ice cream, and they came home, and the next day, the healthcare nurse
Yeah.
was there doing up paperwork before she started coming out.
Okay.
And he got up to go to the bathroom and dropped it on the kitchen floor. And
No
she
way.
Wow. She asked Mom if he wanted CPR or anything. Mom said no. And she said, okay. So Mom called the ambulance. Mom called a whole bunch of other people. I was working. I was on, I had a bad knee or something. I was doing office work. And I just left there at dinner time to go down and get my car fixed. So my car's up in the hoist. And my mother calls me. and says, your dad passed away. I said, what? Yeah, he passed away around 10 o'clock. I said, that's 2 hours ago. She said, yeah. I said, okay. She said, there's no rush. Everything's being taken care of. Come up when you can. I said, yeah, okay. So I was a little jittery because me and my stepfather, we got along real well. Played a lot of cards together. I went out fishing a couple times with him, trout and that. We always chit-chatted and that. And I thanked him over for the years of he was proud of me for being a paramedic. He was proud of me on my second marriage, who I got married to, and seeing how the farm worked and all that. He was really proud of that. And so I knew I called my wife up and I said, she was at work. I said, can you get somebody to drive you over here?
Yep.
And she said, why? I said, well, Dad died and I don't think I can drive. And she said, yeah, I'll be right over there. I'll get one of the girls I work with here to drive me over.
Yep.
Then the next thing I said, thought up, I said, well, my car's up the hoist. So I went in, I said, how long before my car is going to be done? And he said, oh, big 5 minutes. I said, can you make it 3? Why? I said, my wife's on her way over to drive me in that vehicle to O'Larry because my father passed away. Oh, yeah, we'll have it fixed. Just like, it's like, boom.
Clickety clack, it's done.
Car was there before she got there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're heading up west and my phone rings and it's one of the supervisors. He goes, Kent, I have some bad news to tell you. I said, my father died, didn't he? And he said, how do you know? I said, well, my mother called me at 12.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, we thought you heard the chatter on the radio before you left. Because they're talking how no resuscitation and stuff. And the guy, one of the medics said, we'll have to call you by phone because he's a relative of one of our co-workers.
Yeah.
And I'm there. I never paid no attention to it. I left at 11:30 and that. And so I said, yeah, you're kind of late. Mom called me at 12. She said she called 911 at 10. And now you're getting back to me at 1:30. And he sort of snickered and he said, well, I'm the one that's closest to you, Kent. That's why they asked me to call you.
Yeah.
Oh, we had our funeral and everything and started piecing things back together. And of course, it was springtime when he passed away. And my wife and I have a little hobby farm, beef farm. And cows are having calves. So we checked. No calf, no new calf. So we said, okay. Got dressed and everything, and we're heading up. As we're heading up, this brand black new baby calf standing in the rain. Anne's calling her father on the cell phone to ask him to come over. It was the day of the funeral. If he could come over and put the calf and the mother in the barn for us, and we'd see them later on.
Right on.
So that was all done. So that's 2013. 2015, I started waking up crying in October and didn't know why. It went on for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
I got off. Well, I'll just start reading for this.
Yeah, I know you. I know you got a sheet of stuff there that you want to get off, Kent, and that's why I'm just keeping quiet and letting you go.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to tell you how PTSD changed me. Okay. In 2012, I got remarried to a beautiful woman, Anne McPhail from Argyle Shore. We have a small hobby farm. I loved her, and the work we did together on the farm, I couldn't believe how relaxed I was on the farm. It was just different life compared to my job. The stress of my job was taken away when I was driving a tractor or feeding cattle. After a year of being married, because my dad died, the fall of 2013, I was getting confused here.
It's all good, buddy.
Okay. Hey, here it is right here. I started waking up in the middle of the night crying, and would move to the spare room so I wouldn't wake her up. I would lie in bed wondering what was happening to me. I was confused to go on. I couldn't go on this way I couldn't go on the way for a week. I went to see I was going, this was happening for a week straight.
Yeah, it sounds like you were waking up crying and you
Yeah,
just
I
didn't
was
know
waking
why.
up crying, didn't know why.
Yep.
I'd find the spare bed, and I'd probably fall asleep 15 minutes before my alarm clock would go off. I went to see my general manager for help. He always stated that he had an open door policy. But the day I went to see him, all he did was give me a card with a number to phone. I was working that day, so I shoved the card into my work mailbox and went on checking the truck. As I was checking the truck, I was pissed off. That the general manager did what he did to me. I couldn't believe he didn't have time for me. I was still waking up and crying at night, and at the end of the month, the dreams of the walk down the hallway or down the road and having someone call out my name, but nobody was there. I started letting my skills as a PCP go. I was just doing the basics.
Yep.
That went on until one night in December when we had a cardiac arrest, and my partner asked me to start a blind ET on a patient. I looked right at her and said, I couldn't do it because I haven't practiced with them for months.
What did he ask you to do, Kent?
What?
What did they ask you to do?
It's called, you know what an ET tube is?
Yes. Okay, but can you just tell, in case there's listeners out there who don't know, can you let us know?
Well, it's called a blind ET tube. So you just put it in slowly and go. There's two bulbs on it.
Yep.
With two air things. And you put it in as far as you can go. And you pump up the bottom bulb. And then you pump up the top bulb. And you hope you have it in the right place because the bottom bulb will block off any air going into the stomach. And the top bulb will block off any air coming back out of the mouth. So it's you won't miss the lungs. The tube has two holes where the air comes out the lungs.
Okay.
And it was turned into a PCP skill because anybody can do it.
Yep.
But if you don't practice, so I had one more shift left until my Christmas vacation started. She wrote me up on the call that we're on together. And I was glad she did. The best thing she could have done. I thought I might get some help then.
Yeah.
Got a call the next afternoon that I didn't have to come into work that night, but they want me to come into the office the next day. When I went in the next day, I was met by 2 supervisors and the general manager. It wasn't what I thought was going to happen, but that they want me to take a test and do some scenarios. And then they would look at the tests to see where I was in my skills.
Okay.
It wasn't going to be until after Christmas. So just run anxiety.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Running through my head during Christmas. That's really great to have.
Yeah, probably ruin your Christmas a little bit.
Went, let's see, got a phone call to come in. Oh, so after Christmas, I got a phone call to come in the next day to do the tests and scenarios. I arrived in uniform at 8 a.m. at Holland College. I did the written tests, and then I came to the scenarios. I was to work with one of the supervisors while the other videotaped them, and the general manager would tell me what was wrong with the patient. And I was to tell the supervisor what to do.
Yeah.
He was a PCP, and I was a PCP. In the real world, it would be him telling me what to do.
Yeah.
After we were done, they said they would call me before January to have me come into the office and go over it. I got the call and went in. According to the general manager, the only thing I did right was the IV. Everything else was wrong.
Okay.
What do you expect? Anxiety levels at a 10 doing it, and I'm doing stuff that I'm not supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So he said this is what he was going to do. After New Year's, I was to come in to be the 3rd person on the truck and also study the PCB book, and they were going to give me a test, and if I didn't pass, I had 2 more months to get the passing grade. Have my skills up to date.
Gotcha.
The thing was, I was having anxiety really well when I was at the Holland College, and because I was in a room with general manager and 2 supervisors, I felt the way things were set up, it was set up for me to fail.
Yeah. It sounds stressful, buddy.
It was. January 3rd of 2016, it was my first day back after my Christmas break. I felt like I could do this. I was chatting with some of my other medics, one which was going to be with myself and my preceptor, and then the GM came out and asked me to come into the office for our chat. What it was, he had a letter for me to sign. It stated that if I didn't have my skills up to standards, I would be let go and my job would be gone.
Wow.
That's nice stress to put on a fellow on the first day.
Yeah, that's some major stress right there.
He wanted to get me to sign it, saying I agreed with it. I looked up at him after I read it and said, I think I need a union rep here. He said that the union agreed with what the company and knew about it, and if I didn't sign it, it didn't matter. So I signed the letter, but I put under it that I had no union rep there, which he didn't like. I went into the truck to help one of the crew check it over to make sure everything was in it and was not expired.
Yep.
When my preceptor asked me if I was ready to go, I said, yeah, I am. He then turned and walked away, walked into the office and came back 15 minutes later and asked the same question. I gave the same answer.
What did he say?
He left again for a while. his partner and I chatted a while about things and that were going on outside of work. When he came back the third time and asked the same stupid question, I looked at him and then at his partner, and I thought, my writing's there. Partner, and back at him. I was getting pissed off at this line of questions. And then I said to him that if he was going to ask me this frigging question again, I was packing up, going home to hang myself, and that I didn't need to be put through this shit. Then I said to him, is the GM putting you up to this? Trying to make me quit?
Yeah.
Did he answer? He didn't answer my question, but he did say, let's go for a coffee. As we were driving down to get coffee, he told me that the first couple of days I would be watching him how he did calls, and he wanted me to study when we were sitting around. We had a very busy day. Twice I had to drive the truck back to the hospital because he needed an ACP with him because his partner was an ACP in the back to help him. That happened twice. The second time was 20 minutes before our shift was over. The patient was so sick that I had to radio the hospital to let them know what we had. And one of the other crews asked each other, who was that on the radio? They knew I was with Jeremy and Eric, but it didn't sound like me. That was the first day on the trucks. January 4th, 2016, second day. Got to the base about 7:30 a.m. for my 8 a.m. shift. Talked to some other medics for a while, then started to do truck check. While doing it, Jeremy comes out and asks if I would like to try and do some easy calls or practice my skills on patients. I said, sure. We were on our way to get a coffee, and on our way back, we got a sick person complaint call. Jeremy said to me, this is your call. Tell us what you need, want or need, and we will do it. If the patient gets worse, I will take over. It was a call for an older male who had just wasn't feeling well. When we got there, he was in bed sitting up. He was talking and telling jokes to us. His blood pressure was good, his heart, breathing were also good. One of his family members said that to me that they noticed that one side of his mouth was lower than the other. But if you asked him to smile, he looked normal. Then if you just went on with your other tests, like your hand grips and that, thinking that he could have had a stroke, he'd keep his arms in the air for you. He'd look at his face, and you could notice a difference at the corner of his mouth. The right side was lower than the left. We decided he may have had a mini stroke, and the man really didn't want to go to the hospital. But we convinced him, and he should go to make the family feel better. This is when Jeremy asked if there was anything else I wanted to do. I said, I'd like to load him on the stretcher and take him out to the truck. I then said, and I will start an IV in the back of the truck. Jeremy said that is what he was looking for me to do. I got into the back of the truck with the patient. I got the IV bag, the line ready. As I started to get the catheter ready, I went to pick it up, and then I dropped it on the floor. I bent over and picked it up and put it in the sharps container.
Still here, Kent?
I'm still there. I'm just shifting pages.
Yeah.
I didn't remember the trip in or what happened, but Jeremy told me that I started to cry and he asked if I wanted to switch places. Still crying, I stood up and moved away from the patient. I sat down where Jeremy was and cried all the way to the hospital. The next thing I remember was Jeremy asking me if I wanted to see a doctor. 2 hours later, I seen a doctor and he put me off work until I could see a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
2017 March, went to see Dr. Chris Stewart. We talked for what seemed like an hour. He said to me that I would never work again at any level of the healthcare system. I was done being a medic. 2019 came. My career was over with Island EMS. No party, no 20-year medal, no watch for the years of service. It was like they didn't care. No one called to see how I was doing for the last 2 years. It made me feel like a number, and when my number was gone, another one took my place.
Yeah.
Now that I'm fighting back, I hope that's good. October 1st, October 7th of 2020.
Nobody's
really
favorite year.
Days for me. Oh, hold it. Sorry, I skipped by something. Back here. Career over, yeah. I had a good friend that I met through paramedicine. He worked in Ontario, but he had a cottage down here in the island. He come work part-time. And he tried to commit suicide, tried to die by suicide once, but it didn't work. And I was talking to him, and he said, he told me he'd never do it again.
Yep.
And I said to him, I said, if you ever get to the place that you want to do it, call me. I said, I'll talk to you. He never did. He died by suicide on February 3rd, 2020.
Wow.
October 3rd, October 1st and 2nd were a really dark days for me. I was fighting the demons and I was thinking they were winning. Every time I turned around, they had me thinking of suicide. How easy it would have been for everyone else if I just ended my life. I wouldn't be a burden to anyone or my wife. They wouldn't have to worry about me anymore or where the money would come from for the next bill. I tried to fight them, but they were winning. Then October 3rd came up. October 3rd, 2021. 2020. Not 21. Is when I made a plan to die by suicide. I was tired of trying to make money stretch to be able to buy my CBD powder and to save money to go to a psychologist for an hour once every 3 months. I decided I would take my great-grandfather's straight razor into the shower with me because my wife knows I like to take long showers. So if I was in there for 45 minutes, to her it would be nothing. I was just going to cut my throat with the straight razor and bleed out in the shower so I would not have to leave a mess for my wife. Here I go to the shower with this plan. When I'm in the shower, I remember the razor. So my plan failed because I forgot the razor. And I wasn't going to ask my wife to bring it into me.
Yeah. Wow.
I never said anything to my wife about it. I was talking to a friend who called the RCMP to check on me. So I got a phone call on my cell asking if I could stop into the RCMP detachment on my way to Charlottetown. The constable decided I was not a threat to myself or to any other, but asked me to give phone numbers to two good friends, which one of them called Jamie Fox, an MLA from my fire department area, and that called and asked me if we could. In that call, I asked if we could talk, and he came in to my place, and I told him what was happening, and he called the health minister, who called me and asked what he could do, and I said that I needed help with therapy and with drugs not on my wife's health care plan. He was able to get me some help with a therapist, and now I go every 2 weeks to see and talk, and that is my story.
Right on, Kent.
Now I'm fighting back.
Kent, over the time that you spent with your doctor, are you finding it helpful?
With my psychologist or my psychiatrist?
Your psychiatrist that you're seeing now, you say you're seeing them every 2 weeks, I believe?
I'm seeing a psychotherapist.
Psychotherapist, okay. Is it
I
helping?
find she's great. She works with emergency people only.
Yep.
So she works with fire, police, and ambulance, and that's it. She's really kind. You step in her office, and it's like you're walking into your favorite aunt's living room. So if you had a bottle of wine and a couple of glasses, you'd sit down and have a glass of wine with her.
Yeah.
She is great.
That's good, buddy.
I also had the health minister's cell number on speed dial on my phone if I ever needed his help. And I finally when I was able to go see her, I'm still seeing her. And the government's paying for it, which is great. But I don't think it should have took that long.
Right.
And I'm just one of the ones that got through it.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of friends commit suicide in the last couple of years.
Sorry to hear that, buddy.
And like one was a medic that I worked with on the island. Another one was a friend of mine that did it just for Christmas a year ago. Not last Christmas, Christmas before. And and you wouldn't even know there was anything wrong with them.
Yeah. Ken, when you think about your friends that have committed suicide, does that change your opinion on yourself and your suicide?
I'm glad I got help. I think it could have been me. I think, we'll tell you the truth, PTSD saved me from suicide.
How so?
Because prior to my PTSD, I forget things.
Yeah.
Like my concentration isn't that good.
Yeah.
And it's not written down. I don't remember half of it. And I forgot to take that razor with me. I think it was PTSD made me forget to take that razor.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a believer in spirits, and I believe spirits can move things too. I wouldn't. You had a loved one that you lost at some point that took that razor and hit it for a few seconds just so you wouldn't see it.
Well, I don't even have it in the house anymore.
That's good to hear.
I
Can I? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no, I give it to the MLA that I'm good friends with, Jamie Fox. And I said, when I'm in my right mind again, I said, and you can make that decision, you can give it back to me because it is my great grandfather's.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing I have left.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we talk about suicide, and when a lot of people think about suicide, they think, this person has been suffering for a long time and this was a release. Some other people say, oh, he took the easy way out. But when you were contemplating suicide, it was more of a favor to everyone else. You thought you were a burden. So this would make everyone kind of more happy.
Well, that's what the demons were telling me in my head.
Yep. But you know what? That is a way that I hear more and more often with people with PTSD. They're not trying to take an easy way out. They're not trying to, end the pain or the suffering of themselves. They feel like they're doing the world a favor.
Yeah. And when my friend that I said that took his wife 2 Christmases ago, before, somebody asked me why he did it. And I said to them, he didn't do it. I said it was the demons in his head telling him it would be better for him to do it.
Yeah.
And he just went through with it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't let anybody know that he was having problems. Especially when you leave 3 kids and a wife.
Well, that's the thing with suicide. I mean, when someone kills himself, I mean, the pain doesn't really go away. The person that kills themselves leaves that pain for someone else to bear.
Yeah.
Right?
I was listening to a podcast the other day from one of our good friends,
yeah,
Sean Connon, and he had this lady on that her husband committed suicide.
Yeah.
And she said the same thing. She never noticed it.
Yeah, and she probably blames herself a little bit.
She said she blames the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the system really messed up, and it's now they're trying to fix it.
Yeah. Kent, I'm just thinking now. I remember you at the beginning of this here episode. You talked about how your family came to you and said, you got to go back to school. You got to do something. You remember the emergency show.
Yeah.
If the person you are now could go back to the person before school started, is there anything you'd like to say to that person? Would there be any advice you could give to young Kent?
Don't do it.
Don't do it, hey?
No, not really. I think I would have done it anyway.
Yeah.
But hope that there's part of it is, like, I think now they're teaching some of it in the course of the pressure and how not to let the pressure out.
Yeah.
Like I said, I started off the mom and pop organization. It was Suck It Up Buttercup. You use dark humor to relieve some of the stress. But then everybody was a family too. So if you did have a problem, you could go talk to a certain one about it and say, hey, I had a bad call.
Yeah.
And they would understand, and they talk and say, well, okay, let's talk about it. Let's go have coffee and talk about it. Well, sure. Or let's go have a drink and talk about it, whatever. But now I find the companies, big companies, you're just a number. They say they're doing a lot of work, but they're putting so much stress on the medics, especially here in P.E.I. That, like, I seen something on Facebook here the other day from the union had one of the local saying that the company's putting medics in hospitals to relieve the stress because of the nursing shortage when they don't have enough medics to go in the trucks. And that's just putting more stress on the medics.
Yeah.
And what they got to do, they need more medics. And they got to give, like, they came in there when when Tema was really big at the start. And they're saying, well, okay, if you're on a bad call, we're going to take you out the truck for an hour and let you talk about it and get some pressure off you before you go back out. Well, I heard one fellow tell me that he asked for time off in the truck and they said, okay, you can go home with no pay and we'll get somebody to come in and take your place. Well, now the guy's worrying about where the money's going to come from.
Exactly. Kind of forced into it there.
So, no, I'm not going home.
Yeah, that's where he'll push his way through because he's got to feed his kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally understand that. I know I pushed myself in the military probably a little bit longer than I should have, and just for that very reason, you got to keep the paycheck going.
Yeah.
Kent, if you have any advice for any new first responders starting out?
Get psychological training. Get a therapist that you can go talk to at least every 2 months, just to go talk. Even if you just talk about what the weather is like.
Yep.
Like, when I went and took TRP1, I had to come back to the island and be locked down for 14 days. So I sat at home. I did something I haven't done since I was a kid, looking for something to do. When it was storming out, and my mother's downstairs quilting the quilt, I'd go down and help her. So I quilted this little 5 foot by 44 inches wide quilt. It had little fire trucks and Dalmatians and all that on it. And then my wife did the binding. And I told the people that were running the program that that's what I was going to do when I went home. So they said, well, when you come back with TRP2, bring it up or bring some pictures and show us. And I took it with me up to Ontario. And my wife knew when I took it with me, it wasn't coming back. And I ended up giving it to a girl up there. She was a medic in the reserves.
Yep.
And she told her story of what happened to her. And her story sounded worse than mine. I ended up giving it to her. I called my wife that night and I said, listen to this story. And I told her. And I said, I think she needs that quilt worse than I need it. I said, I can make another one. And she said, I didn't think it was coming back, but I'm glad you found somebody that needs it worse than you do.
Yeah.
And she called me last night when I told her about this program that was going on. And she said, I don't know how you can do that, Kent. She goes, and my therapist says I'm a real advocate, which I'm trying to get rid of the stigma on PEI, and a lot of stigma. There's a lot of stigma on people with PTSD. They don't understand it. They don't want to admit it. I don't know if you met Amanda Brazell.
I'm not sure, Kent.
I know she talked there the last time they had the Helping the Helpers. She's on this resiliency training, and I pushed for it. I went to every fire department I could think of, pushing for it, giving her card out and saying, call her, get her to come. It's only one day. It would really help. I said, I sat through the first session that they give at P.E.I. Fire School. Then with my chief and deputy chief, we agreed that we do it with all our fire members. Some of them didn't think they should be there at the start, and at the end of the day, they're glad they came.
That's very cool, Kent.
So, education's a big thing.
It is a big thing. It is a big thing, Kent.
But
It is.
If in these jobs of first responders and military, education on stress and PTSD is a big thing.
Yep.
Like one of my friends, well, he was an acquaintance. His father's more of a friend than he was. He was in the military, and he committed suicide. Died by suicide. Get rid of that committed part. You don't commit, you die. I was talking to they had the big funeral up in wherever in Ontario, and then they buried him here on the island. And I talked to the minister, the clergy from that did it, and he's in the forces too. I said, is there any help or any checklist that they have for these people? And he said, yes, there is. He says, there's two answers. There's the right answer and there's the military answer. And you check the right answer, they send you home. They put you off of medical leave, and that's it. They don't help you. He goes, it's starting to change. Because some of his friends were there at the funeral, and you could tell there was something wrong with them too. Just by the way they're acting.
Well, Kent, you've been dealing with it for a long time now. How about we end the podcast with advice for anyone out there who's going through a similar situation?
Advice, talk to somebody. If you need to talk to me, if you want to call me, call me. My number is 902-675-2826. I'll talk to you anytime. If you need references of where to go to get help, I can give you whatever I have.
Yeah, you can also find Kent on PTSD Buddies.
And yes, I'm on PTSD Buddies too. And I was just thinking, there's a beautiful shirt that I got, and I don't know if you have a picture of it or not, of me wearing it.
Oh, the jersey?
Yeah. And it has one side, it has P.E.I. I got that put on. And where there should be a C for captain, I put an S on it for survivor.
Nice. I do have a picture of you somewhere because you sent it to me of you wearing a jersey. I just don't know if all that's on it.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I was looking at it on my phone.
I remember you texted to me, a couple years ago now that you,
yeah.
I think you sent it to me. Yeah.
That's when I did an interview with a paper.
Yeah.
About PTSD.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Very cool. Well, Kent, you tell an incredible story. This was the easiest podcast I ever did because I asked you pretty much one question, and you told us your whole life story, and what an incredible story it was. I mean, it's easy to see that you went from enjoying a wonderful childhood to going into some really thick situations, and they took a toll on you. And I'm glad to see that you forgot your razor when you went to the shower, because I'm sure your wife, and there's still a lot of people that really care for you, Kent. And Kent, I've seen you in PTSD Buddies. You are helping people. So you went from wanting to kill yourself in the shower to helping people survive their own PTSD. So you are a PTSD hero, Kent, whether you think it or not.
And before COVID hit, we have this thing they call community school
Okay.
for adults. It's at night
Yep.
during the winter time when there's nothing going on. They had one thing called Meet the Speaker, and I volunteered to tell my story. And I even went and I dug up some vital statistics in that
Yep.
and played a few video songs. There's 3 I played. And I have a little fellow that sees me all the time. He says, Kent, that's the best you were one of the best speakers that year.
Nice,
I hope
buddy.
you come back and do it again when everybody's there.
That must have been good to hear.
It was, and I said, I'm going to try.
Yeah. Good for you, buddy. Good for you.
Because the way I look at it, if I can get the stigma out of the community, then I can get the stigma out of almost anywhere.
Well, that's the thing. Sharing your story, I always find, will help you because you're getting things off your chest. And then when you share your story, you're inspiring others, because usually in the audience, there's at least one person who has a similar, is going through a similar situation as you, and they feel alone. And when they hear your story, they don't feel so alone anymore. So sharing your stories not only benefits you, but it benefits the people around you. And that's how the stigma gets broken.
Well, maybe you can put a dig into John Garth for me and get me on Helping the Helpers.
I wish I could, buddy. I have no say in that, because I wish I could speak at that event every year, right? But yeah, he has some amazing speakers every year, and I'm sure once this COVID gets fixed up and he gets back on back to setting up those events again, I'm sure you'll be on the list one year. Well, Ken, I want to thank you personally for taking the time to be on the podcast. I really enjoyed this episode. It was great just listening to your story, because I've known you for a few years, but I've never really heard your full story. So it's great to finally hear it.
Well, that book that I got from you for that cottage,
yeah,
that was the young fellow who took his life.
Wow.
In the military.
Wow.
So his parents set up a nice little cottage, but I don't know what they're doing with it since COVID hit.
Yeah.
They've been trying to get a hold of Wounded Warriors to set up something that they send people to come to it. So.
Yeah. Oh, sad times, buddy. That's I hate hearing about suicide. It's not triggering to me. It's just, it feels like such a loss to me. That's all. Another soul gone too early. But I'm, like I said before, Kent, you are a survivor. You are here. I'm glad you're still here, and you are helping people. I'm proud to know you, Kent. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you, and I still do get triggers. So ambulances are a big one.
I bet they are, buddy. I bet they are. Hey, do you still watch?
I hear meet one. I turn up the radio and shut my eyes.
Yeah, I guess you don't watch the emergency reruns anymore, right?
Tell you the truth, if they had them, I would.
Yeah.
Because I watch a lot of NCIS
yep.
shows, and they don't bother me.
That's good, buddy.
My wife thinks they should, but I said no. These don't. I know they're not real.
Well, that's good. That's good that you can recognize that, Kent. That's good you recognize. All right, buddy. You take care. You take care. I'm just going to say goodbye to our viewers here.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's another episode of PTSD Buddies podcast. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today to listen to Kent share his amazing story. I know you listeners are just like me. You are now inspired by Kent's words. Kent went from wanting to kill himself to helping others deal with their PTSD. So if you're out there now and you're listening to this story and you're feeling a little alone, I want you to know that you are not alone. There are people like me and Kent and many, many PTSD buddies out there who are dealing with their PTSD just like you. You You just got to go out and find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and meet your PTSD buddy today. Join one of our groups, maybe come on the podcast and share your story just like Kent and inspire others. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with another episode. Cheers, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast. Look for more episodes of the PTSD Buddies podcast wherever podcasts are found. Special shout out to our sponsors, Tema Foundation and the Spartan Wellness. And remember, if you or someone you know is dealing with PTSD and you're looking for a buddy, look for PTSD Buddies on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and check out our PTSD Buddies YouTube channel for helpful videos. Join PTSD Buddies today and find your PTSD buddy.